I'm Alex.
And I'm Shane.
And this is Race Per Minute.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Race Per Minute. Today, we will be talking about the BWT Alpine Formula One team and all what it has to offer for the 2022 season. We'll be talking about the launch itself. It was about a 45-minute video. Strange in some parts, but we'll talk about it. I'm sure we will. I wasn't too convinced. It just went off in random directions at some point. And then we'll talk about the technical aspects of the new car. And we can actually talk about the technical aspects because we were presented with, I can't remember the guy's name, but walking around the car and going through each of the critical bits of the car.
Matt Harmon,
which was great. Yeah, I thought that was fantastic. That's when I got re-engaged into the video. And then we'll talk about the livery. Both of them. So without further ado, Alex, should we go straight into the presentation?
Yes, but before we begin,
okay,
I owe you an apology. Before we start.
Okay. This doesn't happen very often at all.
Well, when you're right all the time, it's very difficult. It's very difficult to give people apologies. But no, I do owe you an apology because in our Ferrari episode, I repudiated your claim that English is the most commonly spoken language.
Yes.
And it is the most commonly spoken language by estimated number of speakers.
Grin on my face. For those of you who aren't watching on YouTube, I have got this huge grin on my face. And it's going to stay here for the rest of the podcast.
It is native speakers that I was thinking of.
There you go.
I think English is maybe like third or fourth in native speakers because I think there's more Spanish and definitely more Chinese native speakers and the like. But yeah, so apologies, Shane. English is the most commonly spoken language.
I accept your apology for calling me out on the podcast.
Let's move on then to this Alpine launch. So it's presented by Sandy Arribert, and we're in
very
Paris,
good.
Of course.
Mm.
So keeping it very French. It was all very, keeping it sort of on message, going for that sort of French pride, even though, it is a largely sort of British-based team, obviously in Enstone, but they're keeping their colours to the mast nonetheless. And we were sort of straight off hearing from the CEOs of Renault Group and Alpine. And they talked a lot about how the 2021 season didn't really start as expected. Well, I think it's fair to say they turned up in testing in the first few races and were a bit disappointing. And everyone was going, okay, Renault have pumped all this money into this project, and it sort of started off a little slow. But they ended up having a pretty decent season, all things considered, and were looking very competitive the closer it got to the end. So they talked a little bit about that. We did also get a specific, I think this is the first time that any team has given a specific aim for the 2022 season because the Renault Group CEO, it was the Alpine CEO, Laurent Rossi, he said that they should aim for 5th in 2022. So he was actually very specific about what they should aim for. There was lots of talk about we need to keep learning, we need to keep progressing, all that sort of stuff.
The usual.
Then there's all the usual kind of we've strengthened our team with new people. Obviously, Alpine have Pat Fry as Chief Technical Officer. He was at McLaren for many years. And Matt Harmon, who we heard from later on, he's been at Renault for a few years now. And we did get to hear from Otmar Safnauer because I was wondering whether or not we would actually get to hear from him. And we did. He emphasized a sort of need to collaborate and talked about trust. And the experience that he brings kind of got an air that maybe he didn't feel that was the case when he was at Aston Martin. But it'll be interesting to see what he can bring to that team, having obviously been pretty close to one of their more direct competitors in the last season. So up to that point, before we got to the drivers, it was all sort of by the numbers, sort of, it wasn't particularly engaging, I have to say. It was a bit, it was just a bit sort of generic up to that point.
I can't believe you haven't mentioned the new sponsor.
Oh, yes, sorry, the BWT. I think BWT are sponsoring this car. It was mentioned a couple of times.
Just a few times we talk about BWT. That was the first whole segment of the presentation, wasn't it? It was all about BWT and the partnership and how they're so happy to have them on board and what it means for them and the team and what BWT stands for. And they actually hit on that after the presentation as well. They go on to talk about what their ambitions are as a company and what they do to support renewable and what isn't renewable energy, but it's just sustainable, being sustainable in today's society. But yeah, it's massive, isn't it? BWT, it's all over the car, and it was all over the presentation. So it's definitely a title sponsor.
Yeah, they sort of dominate. They have a sort of thing of dominating the teams that they sponsor. But then again, maybe they really do throw a lot of money in and get themselves known. So, if you're paying for it, you sort of earned that position there, haven't you? So then we heard from the drivers. We heard from Fernando and Esteban, but also Oscar Piastri as well.
Yes,
who's in their driver program and is a very, very highly rated driver. So it'll be interesting to see if he gets a chance. Maybe there'll be a time when Fernando or Esteban can't drive and he gets his big chance to show what he's made of, because he's obviously quite hotly tipped as a good driver. So, we'll see if he gets his shot. Alonso mentioned, of course, that he'd returned to the sport because of these regulations.
Yes. Yeah.
And I had to wait an extra year because of that. But yeah, it was sort of a nice little chat with the drivers. But again, a lot of the sort of same sort of stuff. Really, we're just hoping to do better. It was nice to see them win a race. I don't know. None of those drivers. Fernando is quite an interesting guy. He's quite sort of like likable and quite funny sometimes. But I don't know. Sometimes in the setting like that, it can be quite difficult for them to be quite natural. You sort of stick them on
to
stage
show their
with a microphone.
personality.
Yeah, they don't really get much of a chance to do that. So it was all a little bit by the numbers. Up to that point, it was just before we revealed the car that I went, oh, are we getting a sort of interpretive hand dance from the blue hand group, I guess.
The blue hand group. Yeah, what else could you describe them as?
So that was just sort of popped out of nowhere. I was like, okay, cool. Kind of neat, I guess. Not really sure what the relevance is, but it's kind of interesting, I suppose.
I have to say, up until this point, I wasn't completely engaged in the whole presentation. I think you mentioned in the last podcast that because we've had so many launches now, this being the ninth launch in the last 2 weeks, you kind of get the same questions over and over again, don't you? We talked about the drivers and what their ambitions were for 2022, and they were
how excited are you for 2022?
Exactly.
No, I'm not excited at all. I just
want to go racing.
Let's just get it out of the way, shall we?
But the same questions keep on coming up and up and up. And there's only so many times you can listen to the same answer. Like, yep, we're really excited about the new regulations. Overtaking should be better. We're excited to see what the car can do. It's just, I think that's because they're the 9th launch of the year and their questions don't really get any better than that. But I have to say, when the Blue Hand Gang appeared, that's when I started to focus a little bit more. But I was confused at the same time. It wasn't like I'm
power saving mode, and
yes, I was like, I have to say, I was watching something on TV and watching the launch at the same time. I put my hands up. I wasn't completely giving it 100%. But then I thought, okay, we're just about to get to the cars. I wonder what it will look like, and we were presented with this modern dance. I'm really not sure. Is that French? What was the relevance of it? I'm not quite sure.
The dance itself kind of reminded me of like I want to say sort of East Asian kind of dance of the 1,000 hands kind of thing. Maybe there's like an Indian Asian kind of thing going on there. That was the kind of vibe that I got. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but that was the sort of impression I got. That it comes. The only thing I picked up,
yeah, maybe, but the only thing I picked up towards the end is they did the triangle, and that has been shown throughout the whole presentation of there was triangles, and then the triangles got bigger and smaller, and then they went inside each other.
It's the Illuminati, Shane, obviously.
Yeah,
the Illuminati.
Of course, confirmed. Yeah. And it was only when they got to the end of the dance and did the triangle, I was like, is this all for Alpine? I'm really not quite sure what's going on. This is confusing. And then we had the car turn around on its on the podium quite slowly and revealed itself.
I didn't get the name of the group either, because the presenter, she did say what the name of the group was, but she also had quite a sort of thick accent. So she was just like, that was the group. I've like rewinded it a few times to try and get it, but no, I didn't get the name of it. So if anybody remembers what the name of that group was, and we can maybe look them up.
I really liked the presenter, because we've had launches over the last 2 weeks where it's been a bit mundane. It's been a bit pre-scripted questions, but this felt a little bit more loose. It felt a little bit more generic, not generic, but just what's the word I'm looking for?
She was quite She was quite chipper, wasn't she?
Yeah. And I was like, that's a little bit refreshing because clearly she hasn't seen the car and she hasn't seen the team or, the drivers because they've actually flown in from Spain today because actually I think the car's out at Barcelona now being put together, they said a couple of times. So the drivers flew back today to do the presentation. Why they just didn't launch it 2 or 3 days ago when everyone's in France or they're in Britain. So it just doesn't, it blows my mind, the logistics of it, especially as they're trying to be carbon neutral going into the future.
You're expecting logic from a French state-run corporation, Shane.
Yeah, I expect too much. But yeah, it was good. I liked the whole, liked her presenting. It felt a little bit more original and just a bit fluent. Yeah. But then the car. Should we talk about the car?
Yes, let's. Well, we sort of got a good introduction to the technical side of it from Matt Harmon, who did a bit of a walk around.
Yeah.
Kind of, he sort of followed in Ferrari's footsteps to an extent in that he actually went around the car and talked about it, which is really nice. I wish more teams did that, really. But yeah, explained all the different parts of the car. Easily the most interesting part of the launch. Yes. And he was very detailed and very technical as well, and using sort of a lot of technical language. Some of it was, a bit lost on me in places, but he did point out some interesting parts of the car. Most notably, they've gone for split turbo, which is obviously it's a little bit of a surprise. And it sort of talked about the sort of shaping and aerodynamics of the car. It's got these quite sort of fairly simple sloping side pods.
Yeah, very neat, aren't they?
The overall look of the car is quite simple, actually. When you compare it to like the show car and all the rest of it, like it's not the show car, but it looks very, very similar. It seems like it's quite safe in the way that it's put together. Now, maybe a lot of this stuff is subject to change when it comes to the thing that actually goes on track. But yeah, the whole thing is quite neat and simple and doesn't appear to have anything particularly groundbreaking that I can see. I mean, I'm not an engineer, but when you look at the Ferrari, you're like, wow, what is going on there? Like that's pretty bold. Whereas this looks just very, very similar to the show car and to the sort of expected general regulation style. So the only thing that's notable compared to the previous years is they seem to have a much sort of slimmer cooling package than they did, because obviously the A521 had a very, very big sort of center intake, didn't it? It had this big bulging engine cover intake bit, and they seem to have toned that down somewhat. They have the sort of hanging main plane at the front of the front wing. Again, that's sort of very common to a lot of the teams, so nothing particularly unusual going on there. So I found myself looking at it and going, yeah, this is
what you expected.
This is sort of fairly standard for the regulations.
Yeah, if I was to pick a word to describe that car, it was uniform. It's kind of what I come to expect. We've seen a couple of different designs in the last few weeks, and this is almost like very much in the middle, playing it safe. And maybe that's best for them, because they did mention in the presentation that they've done, is it over 2,000 runs in the wind tunnel so far since they've been allowed to, which I don't know if that's a lot or not, but it certainly sounds like a lot of time in the wind tunnel. I don't know how long these runs go on for, but they definitely said, I don't think they said hours, I think they said runs. So that's, thousands of hours worth of data which they're collating.
It's an impressive number, nonetheless.
Yes. Yeah. And hopefully it means something, because it'd be good to see these, the lower teams use that extra time to close the gap to the top tier teams. But the car looks pretty standard. Like you said, quite similar to the show car, but subtle changes. They did mention actually when they were walking around the car, there was towards the rear wing, there was two almost arms connecting to the DRS. He mentioned in that when he mentioned that in the car in Barcelona only has one. So this has clearly been built a while ago, which makes me think that things have changed since then. And that's easy to assume, because actually we've seen the Haas on track today. At time of recording, it's the 21st of February, and that car looks very different to the car we saw 2 weeks ago, and the renders launched on their Twitter site. So, yeah, take this render with a pinch of salt. We'll see the car next week, or this week now, out on track. Well, we won't personally see it because it's a closed private session, which I'm very angry about, but I'm sure we'll see some footage or some leaks or team, pictures of the car going around the track by the end of the week, and hopefully it looks a little bit different and maybe a little bit more interesting.
Yeah, there's not too much to take from the technical side away from what we might have expected, like you say. Should we talk about the livery then? Or the two liveries? Yeah, we got two to talk about. I mean, one of them is very much just the BWT livery that we got used to seeing, that we saw on the Force India / Racing Point for a few seasons, and is going to be run on the first two races, isn't it? Bahrain and Saudi Arabia is when we're going to see it. They obviously had some kind of agreement. They wanted to get as much pink on it as possible, and we heard a lot from the CEO of BWT, Andreas Weissenbacher, I think his name was.
He's very passionate.
He looks like a Bond villain. I mean, he was sort of.
He does.
He kind of had this sort of like, this sort of well-to-do gentleman, but also I don't know. I don't want to be stereotyped just because he has a sort of long Germanic style name, but like he just sort of, I don't know. I got Bond villain vibes from him. That's all I'm saying. I should have got more Bond villain vibes from the BP Castrol guy, to be honest, but that's a whole other conversation. But he was talking about how, the pink represents the sustainability, and he did say that they were talking about getting rid of single-use plastics, which is good. A lot of that sustainability talk was sort of the usual lip service that is paid to a lot of that stuff. I mean, at the end of the day, BP Castrol, it's essentially a fossil fuels company. Like, let's not beat around the bush here.
Yeah.
They can talk about sustainability as much as they like, but real sustainability would be making their company essentially obsolete. So, like a lot of that stuff, you just take it with a grain of salt, really. But they did talk about getting rid of single-use plastics, and that definitely is an important thing for sustainability.
It's a step in the right direction when it comes to the sport as well. Like, imagine the amount of plastic which gets used on a race weekend. Just throughout the staff and the team, get rid of that. Get some, reusable bottles or no plastic at all, and just start using other materials. It would be brilliant. It'd be so good.
Yeah, because of course it's just, I mean, not to go too far off topic, but it is reduce, reuse, recycle in that order.
Yes, yeah.
Recycle is supposed to be the last thing that you do. You're supposed to do the other two first if you can. So fair play to them for pointing that out. But so they obviously wanted to get a pink livery, emphasize that a little bit more, spread their message, give themselves their branding, get the most for their money, etc. So don't have too much to say about the pink livery, because it is just the BWD pink livery on the new car. It's sort of very much what we've come to expect. I think it's a good looking car. Like I like that livery. It's a sort of good, iconic look. I like that it's really bold, and that pink is a lovely shade.
We should count how many times Sky Sports or Channel 4 say Racing Point in the first two races compared to Alpine, because it will be difficult. I will be looking at it going, oh, Racing Point are doing all right. And I was like, well, hold a second, they're not even in the sport anymore. They're Aston Martin. What's going on? Why have you got a pink car? And then on the third race of the year, we'll have the blue and pink.
What do you think of this sort of main livery then?
Well, we knew BWT were going to be sponsoring Alpine a week ago. It was pretty much confirmed, and then some fans drew up some renders, some like fan ideas, and actually this is exactly what I expected it to look like, to be honest. The blue for the Alpine and the pink on the side. I didn't expect the rear wing to be as pink as it is, but it is what it is. It's blue and pink. It's hard colours to get to match with one another, but actually, if I'm being honest, I think it looks all right. I think it looks good.
Yeah, it's like you say, it is largely what I expected from the livery. They sort of they made it clear what was going to happen. I think I expected it to be a bit bolder, though. I kind of wish that more teams would paint those wheel covers. Like they could have given it like pink wheel covers or something. That might have been interesting.
That would have been interesting. Yeah, that's the word I would use.
But it's sort of a bit. I don't know. There's something a bit. Even though it's blue and pink, there's something a bit safe about it. It's like I feel like they could have gone a bit further, but maybe they didn't want to. Again, we have to consider the sort of the art and design,
of course,
clash. That shade of blue continues to be lovely, though. I think it's a fabulous sort of main color. But otherwise, it's very, very similar to last year's car. It's a sort of continuation of that look.
There's also a lot of black as well on the side of the nose, or at the front of the side pods, and the floor is all black as well. And I think because some of their sponsors, like Castrol, and we've got a red one there. What's that? Is it matte free?
Yeah.
Because they've got like a bold background color, which is not blended into the the actual livery itself, it kind of looks a little bit disjointed and a little bit just doesn't fit very well. But that's the problem when you have sponsors which require their own separate background color, which is like some others don't. Like if you look at the Ray-Ban on the Ferrari, it's just Ray-Ban. It just looks good because it can blend into the background or it can blend into livery. So I think it looks a little bit disjointed and a little bit patchy because of these various sponsors. And yeah, I do like it. I really do like it. It just feels a bit busy. And in the bad way, it feels a bit busy, as in it looks a little bit rushed, whereas the Ferrari looked busy,
isn't there?
But it looked premium, the Ferrari, whereas this looks busy and let's just try and squeeze on as many different sponsors as we can. I guess maybe it's just the pink and the blue. I really like it, don't get me wrong. I think it looks great, but I just think there's loads of sponsors on there which break it up too much. If there wasn't as many sponsors, I think it would look bold like you want it to, but obviously sponsors bring in money, so they come first. Apologies that you can't have the livery you want.
Yeah. I do like the pink sort of tipped cooling, the inlets.
Yes, yeah.
That's rather nice. And there's the sort of the French flag down the middle, down the sort of the center part of the halo towards the nose, which is rather nice. The pink numbers, or the pink number on the front of the car anyway, is quite nice. But yeah, you're right. There's just sort of too much text on the car, isn't there? Like they've got their alpinecars.com on the halo, and then BP Ultimate next to that, and then the engine cover you've got Renault, and then E-Tech, and then Castrol, and then the flag, and then the number, and then another thing at the back that looks like just sort of a random number, and then Alpine, and then it is there's just a bit too much text. And good for them for having lots of sponsors, and for they've obviously got to meet their design requirements and their sponsor requirements, so that's just surplus to the sort of artistic requirements really. But the ultimate look, if we're going to judge it on those kind of aesthetics, is that it is, like you say, quite busy, and it comes across as a bit like a sort of like sort of an optician's test or something, where you've got to squint to see the really small text.
I'll probably fail it.
Yeah, I need an optician's strip myself, and this is sort of proving it likely. I'm going, what's that on there? What they got written under? So. But it's not a bad looking car. It's.
No, I think it's all right. I think it's good. I think it's a good looking car. It's just a little bit busy. I really like you've already mentioned it, but the pink on the inside of the side pod intake, because it's against the black. That's bold. That looks really nice. And then you've got the pink against the blue, and I'm like, it's not as bold. It's a bit wishy washy. Maybe it might look 10 times better on track, because McLaren launched some photos today of their car going around Barcelona, and I was a bit 50-50 on their new livery. But actually, around the track, it looks great in natural light. So maybe this got quite a glossy look to it as well. Will look really good on track.
Yeah, I think we're either way, we're going to have a whole grid of cars that will look pretty, stand out. I think that there have been a few years where there's been quite a few cars that look sort of similar, and lots of sort of simple blue and white cars. And I think this year we're going to get a grid full of very interesting looking cars. And we've got Alfa Romeo to go, and in recent years, their cars have looked great, so I'm looking forward to seeing what they come up with as well. Right, that's the Alpine, the BWT Alpine.
How could you forget the main sponsor?
BWT Alpine and their A522. So we sort of rather liked this car, maybe thought it could be a bit bolder. What did you think? You can send us your thoughts or questions or any comments about the launch or any of the launches that we've done to us at RacePerMinute on Twitter. You can also get in touch at RacePerMinute.com or comment below if you're on YouTube. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to completely and utterly destroy the like button and give us a rating wherever it is you're listening. It does help if we get a few ratings and all the rest of it. Helps us, it's a sort of a prayer to the algorithm gods that we might be pushed towards other people that might like us. I don't understand how it works, but I do understand that pressing buttons is good, and that is
the way forward.
That sends us in the right direction. If you really like what we do, then you can also subscribe wherever it is that you're getting us, and to get all the latest episodes straight into your inbox. And if you really want to support the show, and whether you've been listening to us for a long time or only recently, if you want to help us keep the quality content coming, keep us ad-free, get yourself some lovely rewards, then you can donate as little as £1 a month at patreon.com/ RacePerMinute. Right, that's all the sort of housework out the way. Shane, we've got one more. We've only got one more to go now. I have to say it's been a very busy period for RacePerMinute, what with, launching the new look and doing all the stuff on the various websites and then doing our new welcome and then doing all of these launch reactions. It's been a busy period, but we're slowly coming to the end. Are you looking forward to Alfa Romeo, or are you feeling a bit like, oh, we've got to sit through one more press conference of how excited are you for 2022?
That's a good question, Alex, and I'm not quite sure which way I want to go.
It's a better question than people are asking in these leading conferences.
I am looking forward to it because they do have some really nice liveries, and they have been one of the better looking cars in the last couple of years. So hopefully they've taken a step in the right direction and created something not too different to what they've had already, because I quite like it. But maybe something a little bit bolder. And I think all these liveries look better on the new cars anyway, because the new cars are a lot more curvy. They're a lot less boxy. The old regulation cars always had like really sharp edges, which I didn't realize until we've seen these new cars. I'm like, damn, these new cars look great. So any of the old liveries on the new cars will look great. And I'm hoping that Alfa Romeo will take a step forward in that direction as well. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Sounds good. Well, we'll see you for our last launch reaction. When is it coming? It's coming out after testing, isn't it? So we're going to have to go through the whole of this sort of closed testing, and then we're going to find out about their car. So either way, we'll see you there for that.